this is kind of the background for the 5 sessions, all right? And the 5 sessions, and my little cursor goes around here. This is the essential wisdom part. And I'm maybe repeating myself, but to me, this is so exciting. It's so exhilarating that there is a way out of this mess in my mind. And it's not top-down changes. It's not bottom-up changes. It's about facilitating the system to transform itself. And that's what we talked about last time, is the first element is facilitation. We also talked last time about asking you for your wish for society. I presented a monster wish that, to me, is about how do we really transform society. And you probably can't read it right now. In fact, I think I have it here written somewhere, but somehow we get all the people to be involved, to facing this monster issue, each one at a time, creatively together, where we achieve breakthrough progress. If you and I, if somehow we could facilitate all the people to come together and face these problems, creatively and collaboratively together, gosh, that alone is sort of the solution. Even if we didn't come up with any answers, we got everybody working together, we got everybody being a part of a creative endeavor where we're listening and being in relationship to one another. But if we could come to unity about what's going on and what to do, well, heck, that's like governance. That's democracy. That's what's supposed to happen in democracy. If all the people that come together and reach unity about what to do and face these problems, that's what's missing from our society. We're not. So today we're going to talk about the second element in the essential wisdom, and that's choice creating. And choice creating is the magic sauce from all of it. And it's the type of thinking that we use that we know can solve impossible to solve problems. And here's a definition of it. It's to face a monster issue, meaning some impossible seeming issue, creatively and collaboratively with heart and mind, not like brainstorming with just the mind, but with the heart as well, the feelings. And we're seeking what's best for all. And shifts and breakthroughs occur naturally, and they spark unity and clarity. The basic sense of it is that we haven't even started thinking yet. We haven't started talking yet. And when we talk about, or when I mean talking and thinking, I really mean a certain quality of talking and thinking, not the quality of thinking that we do in our current political system, which is, where we argue and fight and over yes, no, agree, disagree, find the villain and fear-based, that kind of thing. What we want to do is transform our thinking process to the highest level, away, and to me it's critical, it's away from decision-making, which is really based on judgment. You decide. D is the root word for decision, is to cut away. D is away, cision is to cut, like precision or concise, whatever. So that application of judgment is the opposite of creativity. In other words, if you know from your own experience that if you were creative as a child and somebody judged what you were doing, it shuts down the creativity. So judgment and creativity are on opposite poles. And when I talk about decision making, I'm talking about cutting away with judgment. We have these options and we cut away the options. And we also cut away our feelings so that we're not wrapped up in that. And we cut away the minority viewpoints, and we cut away the minority votes. It's a cutting away process. And you and I have been born into a decision-making system, and I'm going to make a picture of that. So there's, first of all, lots of kinds of talking. Like dialogue, deliberation, negotiation, etc. And what these do is they come together, and you might want to do some dialogue before you do your decision making. You might want to do some deliberation before you do your decision. And you might, or you could try to reach what they call consensus. And that's kind of often that's a mutual compromise kind of thing. But at some point we do decision making. And that's cutting away. That's your judgment. The opposite of creativity. Now, what you and I are talking about here today is a different kind of talking and thinking that I call choice creating. So this is decision making. It incorporates lots of different kinds of thinking because you want a preparation time of doing something. But the other one is where we are just talking and thinking, and we're our feelings are involved. Feelings. We're sharing authentically who I am. Authentic. So I'm sharing who I am. Ideas that are maybe a little wacko. And we stay in a creative place. And we keep going around, and we stay in a creative place until what happens is that we realize, hey, we're all saying the same thing. Or this is really, we all get it, that, oh, we know what to do. And an example for me was one time my wife and I and my son and his friend, we were driving into the mountains, and we were going to go on a picnic. And this was before the time of cell phones. But we looked on the map, and it looked to be, the campground looked to be just about, I don't know, maybe 5 miles from the road, the main road. So we drove down this dirt road to find this campground. And I was driving really hard and turning, trying to hurry because my wife likes to eat at the same time every day. She did that. And but anyway, at some point we saw another car coming, and we flagged it down, and we asked the driver how long it was to the campground. And he said, it was about 18 more miles. Well, we did a really smart thing after that. We pulled over to the side of the road, and we just shared where we were. Are we hungry? What do we care about? And then we realized that we all wanted to go ahead, and we just drove ahead, and then immediately, or nearly immediately, we found an apple tree by the side of the road, and we went and we picked some apples, and a little later we saw a beautiful view. We got out, took pictures, and later, and then when we arrived at the campground, it was like time had just flown by. And so what we realized is that the moment in the car, the stopping the car, in that process, we changed our mindset. We created the choice to go ahead. It was a creative process. There was no decision, no judgment, really. It was just a creative conversation, and we all knew what the answer was. And then that process transformed the situation, and I'll say it now, but it transforms ourselves too. It's how it transforms our relationships and who we are. There's a very big impact with choice creating. And to me, it's about how do we solve impossible to solve problems. And in the process, if we are in that spirit of choice creating, there's not only breakthroughs emerge, but the context is changed. Like when we got in the car and we talked in that open-hearted way, what happens is that all of us changed our spirit. And then there's a transformational change too, which really was more evident with the Emil example that I gave last time. Choice creating. It's a quality of thinking that is capable of establishing we the people. And I want to draw a chart. The thing about facilitation that we talked about last time is that whenever somebody's going to facilitate, you can bet that that person has a particular kind of thinking in mind. And let me draw a picture of these different kinds of thinking here. So in my mind, first of all, there's like reacting. And that is sort of non-thinking. And it's interesting because our system is set up really to try and help us all become just reactive and stop thinking so that we would just get the stimulus from the advertising and buy the product. So that's kind of the non-thinking level. And of course, that's how the democracy seems to be set up for that too. But ideally, there's a shift to a higher level of thinking, and that would be a facilitative adventure, call it F1 if you will, where we facilitate to a higher level of thinking that I would call decision making. And that's what our system, we were left by the founders of our system with an orientation toward decision making. And the idea is ideally that there would be deliberation beforehand, and we would think in a responsible way and kind of weigh the options. But so that would be the high form would be like deliberation. And then, what we've got though is voting and just an adversarial process of special interests battling. So okay, you got this special interest battle at the low end, and you've got this high level of deliberation. And when you talk to a political scientist, they're trying to get us. They're really trying to facilitate deliberation. That's what they'd like to do. So they have the citizen jury process, the citizens assembly process, the deliberative poll, that kind of thing, to try and engineer deliberation. What we're not doing, and this would be the next level to a higher level of thinking, and of course the highest level is going to be choice creating, but the higher level would be problem solving. And that's not done in our system, really. I mean, it's done at the individual level in the marketplace, maybe, but it's not done in our governance system. There isn't. If you were to problem solve, you probably wouldn't get reelected. The way it seems to work, and problem solving too has its levels of capability. Rational problem solving is was a favorite. And then to go to a higher level of thinking that's even more capable of solving big problems. No, that's not going to work up there, but okay. Or even impossible. So is what we would call creative problem solving. And that might go from like brainstorming, that kind of thing,
where we stay in our creative minds, or visioning would be another possibility, where people set a vision collaboratively maybe and come to a shared vision, and then somehow just by doing that, it motivates people, and the vision starts to happen. So it's a very powerful process. And of course, in our system, ideally the president could do that, but it isn't set up that way. If they tried to, if our current president tried to set a vision, the other media silo would have a fit and say how wrong it is, I suppose. But so anyway, those are two possibilities, like brainstorming and visioning. And then there's another leap ahead, and this is to the realm that's really, this is all the possible problems. So there's really another realm to impossible to solve problems, and what we call this choice creating. And in creative problem solving, you're really dealing just with the intuition, and you're not hanging on to your feelings. And in fact, in brainstorming, for instance, we cut off the feelings in traditional creative problem solving. So, you might say, as a brainstorm idea, oh, shoot them, or kill them, or torture them, or something like that. You're not thinking. These are just brainstorm off the top of the head kind of things. But when we start choice creating, then now we're hanging on to who we are and sharing what our feelings are and what the essence of it is. And the idea of choice creating is that it's a way of facing the impossible seeming issues, and people sharing who they really are, really coming on board with what they want and what they think is the best answer. And of course, normally if you were to say that, you might feel criticism. And the difficulty is that when you're being creative and you feel criticism, it hurts deeply. So we shy away from just being authentic in our problem solving that way. So, but with dynamic facilitation, which we're going to talk about next time, you're holding everybody safe. You're keeping everybody safe. So what we're doing now is we're taking people to this higher level. So there's F1, F2, F3, and F4, different kinds of facilitation. And this is dynamic facilitation. That is oriented toward choice creating, holding the space where everybody can be authentic, where we're going to face these impossible seeming problems, and we're going to have breakthroughs. We're going to have shifts, and that's the idea. And it's kind of like what happens naturally sometimes in a crisis. When a car crash or something, everybody just kind of converges, and people are working together and maybe accomplishing miracles and risking their lives, and barriers fall, and we're just doing what it takes to fix things. And that, of course, that's what a lot of people are waiting for when you're dealing with these environmental crises. A lot of people I know are waiting for this choice creating spirit to kick in, where we all throw away this silly fighting and we work together and make miracles happen and rise to the occasion. Dynamic facilitation is a way to achieve that high quality of thinking without, we are facing a crisis, because that's what we do. We pick an issue that's a crisis issue and work on it. But we're doing it before the actual crisis comes and beats us up, hopefully.
Is this, maybe just say, is this making sense to you? Are you with me when I talk like this? It's
Yeah,
kind
it
of
definitely
strange.
does.
What?
It definitely does.
Okay,
Makes
great.
sense.
All right. In the United States, anyway, the founders of this country, this is in the 18th century, said, here's how we're going to think. Here's how we're going to talk. Here's the kinds of decisions we're going to make. We're going to make decisions. We're going to have a competitive process. And then they had a wonderful conversation and they set up a wonderful system for their time. And now you and I live inside that box and we have these problems that seem impossible to solve. But we're trying to solve them all from within the box. We're running down, we're painting the street with says Black Lives Matter, and we go down and we're trying to influence the elected representatives, and we're trying to do everything we can within that box to solve the problem. And somebody just needs to blow a whistle. You get a referee whistle and blow it and say, everybody out of the box, come on, let's all gather and just see what we got going here. You all okay about trashing the planet? Does that work for you? You want to make any changes? I mean, there is a different kind of conversation out there that's begging to happen. It's begging to happen. And I'm just saying that that conversation is not dialogue. It's not discussion. It's not negotiation. It's what I'm calling it, it's not decision making. I'm calling it choice creating. So we have our normal, that's 97.5% of the time, we have that normal conversation, decision making. We live inside the box. We only work on what you can do, blah, blah, blah. But then shift gears, 2.5%, we step out of the box. We say, okay, these are the real problems. What do we do? How do we solve it? And if you and I can facilitate that conversation of all of us, we are in a new system. That is a new system. That's one where the constitutional system is secondary, not primary. You and I have changed the definition of real life. We have changed human nature because we're now facilitating a completely different context for people to live inside of. There's a way, there is a way out, and it has to do with facilitating people to step out of that box and becoming real and being in a real conversation. And the real conversation doesn't have a name. It's like the Native Americans or the tribal people, they do everything they know about this quality of talking. They know about it and they structure it. They have little piece, they pass the peace pipe, or they have a kiva, they build a kiva and they all go into the kiva, whatever. They know that we have to somehow get to that quality of thinking. Okay, there is this quality of thinking, quality of talking, quality of being that we want. Now, what the founders did, they did a great job. They set up a system that isn't that. It was fine because people were independent. There was a huge continent. There was lots of room. There wasn't much government anyway. You could have this competition be the basis, but it can't be the basis going forward. It can't be the basis for the next phase of life. We are interdependent. Interdependent. We're not independent like they assume. We are interdependent. We can't do competition. We have to do conversation. And it has to be a certain kind of conversation, a certain quality of conversation where we're respectful and we're listening and we're trusting what's coming up from ourselves, and there's a space to hold it, and we're self-reflecting. That conversation, it turns out, doesn't have a name. And so I'm calling it something. I'm calling it choice creating. We want to facilitate an ongoing, whole system, choice creating conversation. at whatever level, at the local level, at the national level, at the global level. Now, there's only a few of us to get that. There's really brilliant people, really brilliant people doing great work. But honestly, I don't see how that can work unless someone, us maybe, facilitates that whole system conversation so that we can all act together. We can act cohesively. We can act with the right motivation. All right, maybe we can get a law passed so that everybody wants to think in terms of the laws and influencing elected officials, and that's what they call real change. Well, real change doesn't change anybody's motivation. We're still having this competition. Profits are still number one. Maybe we change the incentives a little bit, but that's not real change. Real change is when we get out of this whole deal where we're trying to compete for self-interest, and we step into the world of recognizing what's really happening and trying to figure out how to deal with it in the real way and what we really want and what's a way that works for everybody. And that whole conversation, I'm giving it a name. I'm calling it choice creating, and I'm wanting to show a way to facilitate that. So we saw the power of facilitation. We're looking at the power of choice creating, and just today. And next time we'll talk about dynamic facilitation, and notice that, oh my God, that is one way to get choice creating. There's lots of ways. You and I step into choice creating all the time in the local setting a lot, in church or just different settings, in meetings, especially with friends. You can find that space. Or, and this is the big or, there's another time when choice creating comes out. And that's when everything falls apart and we realize we're all going to die unless we just skip it. And we have a crisis. We have to pull together and make everything work. And oh my goodness, now we have this miracle that happens. People can come together and they can rise to the occasion, and they start listening to one another. And so a lot of environmentalists, for instance, are saying, well, gee, I think nothing's going to happen until the things get so bad that we finally come together and start working. Well, what is the change that happened? All that does is facilitate a shift to choice creating, in my mind. So we somehow got to choice creating through the crisis.
Jim?
Yeah, please.
Just to highlight that point, in a crisis, what happens, say it's all the power goes out, it's a flood or a storm or whatever, all of a sudden everybody's equal. Everybody's got the same problems, and yeah, there might be people that step up into a leadership role, but the fact is, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Well, I'll do this, and somebody needs to do that, and everybody just instantly begins to work together, and then until things start to heal, and then the powers that be climb back into control.
Yes, and the crisis is it's on us right now. We're there. It's just that we're not ready to acknowledge that it's there, right? I mean, science is telling us that we're not really sustainable. So when does that shift happen? When do people go, oh my goodness, this is really not happening. This is really bad. We have to shift. This is Oz Swallow. He was a South African consultant. He says, your quality, I remember him just rattling this off, and I wrote it down. I thought it was so cool. He says, your qualities cannot be discovered until you're tested by a crisis. So if you find yourself in an awful mess, that allows you to become great. Indeed, this is the only process by which greatness comes about. I love that. So one of the things that I notice is that, for instance, the political scientists of the world are all interested in improving our situation. And they come back to this term deliberation. They want deliberative democracy. And it's really, really good. So rather than arguing and debating, we should be looking at the options and deliberating, weighing the options and understanding the options. Now, of course, the deliberation as a quality of thinking is making the decision-making world better, but it's not the shift to choice creating. It's not where we're all stepping out of the box and we're trying to figure out together what's really needed and how do we really do it, and being creative together and coming to unity. But if I go to a conference of people who are into deliberation, they will say, oh, well, we have new ideas. We sometimes have a breakthrough. But what they're really talking about is something that happened in the bathroom. You know, it didn't happen because of the process. It happened, they gathered at a conference there together, and then they went off and talked in the evening drinking, booze or something, and a couple people came up and had, I'm wanting to point out that I'm really, really thinking this word choice creating, giving it a word to this quality of thinking is really important, because what's happening now is that every camp out here, the problem solving camp, the consensus building camp, the dialogue camp, they all claim choice creating, even though they're actually, when you see what they're describing of how to proceed is something else. Like dialogue, for instance, you will hear people say we need to get together and come up with answers. We need to all have a dialogue and come up with answers. Well, if you read the definition of a dialogue, there is no answers in a dialogue, no collective answers. It's a conversation where it's transformational. People transform. I love dialogue. I'm in a dialogue tomorrow, but it's not choice creating where we come up with a group answer. We face some problem and come up with a group answer. That's not what we do in dialogue. Dialogue is an individual thing where we are talking in a heartfelt way, and we're doing inquiry instead of advocacy. And I mean, there's a definition of dialogue, but the way people use the term dialogue, they pretend that choice creating's in there, and it's not. And the same thing with consensus building, and the same thing with deliberation, and the same thing with problem solving. The choice creating is a separate thing that is the missing ingredient. And it's mush the way it's going. You know, our conversation is mush because everybody's kind of assuming this magical quality is in their, is in their negotiation. They're going to write a book about transformational negotiation, and they're not talking about negotiation. They're talking about choice creating, but they've relabeled it and made it. So anyway, I just wanted to highlight that I think this magic sauce that's needed if we're going to have a real we the people conversation, if we're going to do the monster wish, we need to hold on to the distinctions of what these ways of thinking are. You might call it becoming a connoisseur of thinking, being a connoisseur of the different thinking approaches that are out there. So I'd see if I can share with you. For instance, this is a video. I hope you can see it. Really, really good man. Really, really great man. They're doing how do we change the system? But here we go.
How do we start a really informed, non-rhetorical discussion nationwide about how do we change the system. The project is to try to launch a big national dialogue. We've got the president of the last year's president of the American Political Science Association agreeing that we face a systemic problem, time to have a debate about it. We had a big meeting at Harvard recently. President of the Sociological Association also saying we face a system problem, time to have a national discussion of what does that mean, how do we go forward.
So that's, you see, there's a loss of the distinctions, and it's just throwing words at the quality that we need to have. And what I'm recommending among us all in this second phase of our seminar and this importance of choice creating is that we hang on to this word choice creating and keep noticing that that is what is needed, not this other stuff, not the discussion. We're not seeking a discussion, a national discussion. We're not seeking a national debate. We're not seeking a national dialogue. We're seeking a national choice creating. That's what we need. And so I'm, and if we can find it, if we can hold on to that little bit there, then, oh my goodness, doors open. We have this amazing potential for change. Now the thing that's cool is that we don't have to run and teach everybody this. We don't have to teach people this. We just have to facilitate the conversation so that choice creating is what naturally occurs. I guess what I'm saying is that here's the box that we live inside. This is the system. And the system is really a set of rules, kind of rules of the game, if you will. And inside this, this system that I call the box system is basically sets up competition and judgment. And there's another system before this one, I should have written it earlier, called the triangle, where you have this great leader, the king. And that system sets up loyalty. You need to be loyal. That's really what it boils down to. And there's a hierarchy. And I believe the Constitution, see, I wrote it, I wasn't going to talk about the triangle, and so I had to add it, and I don't have it in my room, but the Constitutional Convention was how we shifted from the triangle to the box system. And this shift changed all of us. It changed everything. And I think we'll talk about this more because we're almost out of time. What I'm proposing is that we have this box, but what we need to do is have as well a certain kind of conversation where we step out of the box for just brief moments. Like when I was working in a sawmill environment, we did an hour every week where everybody would stop and they'd step back and think in the spirit of choice creating. They would face a problem and they would be facilitated dynamically, and we'll talk about that. And they would have shifts and breakthroughs, and sometimes they wouldn't know that they had shifts and breakthroughs, but they did. But what happened in this process of just having these regular meetings on an ongoing basis that were just very short, and the box was left entirely alone, what happens is that you find yourself changing into a new system. You realize we're not really in this box system anymore. We're in a different system. We're in the circle system. And in fact, we start changing the box. We need a box. It's good to have it, but we start changing it around and reshaping it because there's a we the people. There's all of us together solving these problems. And now we affect the box completely. So there's more to say about this, and I wasn't going to talk about it next time, but that's kind of where we're headed, is that the wisdom, the choice creating, this stepping out of the box and thinking in this spirit of choice creating is transformational. That's why it doesn't have a name. It scares people because it changes who I am. It changes me as well as the group. It changes me as a part of a group. It changes everything. And we'll talk more about that. But I want to stop on time today. But that's so that's why I keep harping on choice creating being this special kind of talking, not just the facilitation. The facilitation is huge, but also we'll take another step and look at choice creating and see that, oh my gosh, this is a magic sauce. This is a way we can, if we can facilitate this quality of thinking, and if we can do it at the big system level, oh my goodness, everything can change. I hope this is as exciting or half as exciting for you as it is for me. It's very exciting that you're here giving me the chance to talk about this. Thank you for that.
I have a question.
Yes, perfect. Yes.
Yeah. What is the ingredient? How would you describe the ingredient in the magic sauce that enables us to think, have a magic solution? And so what is it about a crisis that helps that surface?
I think that's the way we'll have to talk about it next time. It's a fun conversation, but I think, you have to think about evolution in general. This is really an evolutionary leap we're talking about. It's an evolutionary leap. It's what evolution does. It goes into a crisis, and then there's a new self-organization, and then it comes out as a different beast. And that's what we're entering right now, I believe.
One way to think about it is when there's a crisis, it breaks the box.
Breaks the box.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. And
thank you.
Thanks for asking the questions. This is a great sized group, isn't it, for what we're doing?
Yeah.
So, thanks.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Have a good week.
See you next week.
All right.
Bye.
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 Bye.